Also, thank you for your advocacy. And the reason why I thank you for your advocacy is because one of the things, and we've actually known each other for 3 years.
Yeah.
I've been speaking to your programs since 2023. And actually before that, but obviously you weren't there pre 2023. But the purpose to this presentation is exactly what you described, which is that throughout medical school, residency, and fellowship, they don't teach you any financial acumen. They also don't do a lot beyond medicine. Everybody becomes kind of medical savants almost. The concentration is so didactic, so focused on finance and or finance, sorry, focused on medicine. And as a result, they don't do a lot of the building of the other aspects of someone's life beyond. Um, so the fact that this group, while it is women in faith in medicine, women of faith in medicine, that's what brought you all together, but that you're also continuing to develop yourselves in ways beyond your clinical responsibilities is phenomenal. So it's just really, really cool that you're doing something like this. Physicians need it. All physicians um, need to be able to have outlets and be exposed to ways of being able to better themselves beyond just medicine. Um, and just for context, everyone is here in the States, correct? Or will be?
Yeah, at some point possibly, but there are people who are from Hungary. We have someone in New Jersey, someone in Zambia. So it's quite
Okay.
a diverse group.
Okay. Because uh, the financial acumen is difficult on one hand because these are terms that you're not familiar with. I was at Northwestern meeting with an orthopedic surgeon. His um, surgery was running long. I was in a call room, and there was a board review book in front of me, and I just, out of curiosity, opened it up and flipped to a random page, and it took me about 15 minutes to read one paragraph because it's Latin to me, and that's unfortunately the way that this is for you as well. That a lot of these terms are foreign and complex, and there's intimidation with it. It can be frightening, and we don't want to screw it up. We don't want to get it wrong. Now, all that said, a lot of the terms we're going to use are going to be relative to the U.S. financial system, and so if you're not going to be in the States or if you aren't in the States presently, there's obviously versions of this, the topics we're going to talk about, versions of this that you'll have to apply where you are geographically. But as Faith said, there is what are these things? But then more importantly is how. How do you use them? Everyone is unique and different. You may all be physicians, you're in different specialties, you may have different types of practice backgrounds, you may have different incomes, you have different goals, dreams, desires, values, and all of that needs to be utilized in order to be able to determine not just what these things are, but how you use them for your circumstances. So we're going to talk at a macro level, um, but if there is a question or if there is something that is different in the area of the world that you are in that we need to talk about how does it fit relative to you. Feel free to unmute yourself, to ask a question. If you start speaking, I will shut up. Or put a question in the chat. And then Faith, if you could just pay attention to the chat. So the this is the presentation, this financial well-being for physicians. And um the the as Faith kind of mentioned, this is it's building blocks. That I used to call this a financial awareness process that that all of this you just kind of keep adding to it on a day-to-day, year-to-year basis as you continue to get statements from different investment companies or bills from different insurance companies. You need to understand what those things are in order to get peace of mind out of them. All of this is about peace of mind. You help your patients with peace of mind. You should also get peace of mind from a financial perspective. And so the point to this is to try to help you understand not just what you're doing, but why or how it fits. So this is the main slide that I generally focus on. And the purpose to it is not to say, here are all the things that you need to work on. It's to say, how do we dissect, how do we segment the phases of a medical career and cross-reference that with the different aspects of wealth management or financial planning. And so this is more of a prioritization order of magnitude, a what should I learn about and focus on when? And obviously, this is all going to evolve and change over time. The biggest thing that any of us have, the biggest commodity that any of us have in life and when it comes to finances is time. And the sooner that any of us get started with any of these concepts, the better in general. Having more time for interest to compound, it is an unbelievably huge, long-term, powerful way of being able to create more value long term. So no matter where you are in your training or if you're practicing, there's never a too small an amount number to get started with. Getting started and not only having interests build over time, but also building the habits, starting to get that the habits of seeing the money going into different strategies for long term is absolutely huge. Um, so emergency fund is not fun. The general adage with emergency fund is that it should be 3 to 6 months of living expenses. The reason why it's 3 to 6 months of living expenses is because the biggest emergency generally is a disability occurring, and most disability insurance contracts have a 3 to 6 month waiting period before benefits kick in. The emergency fund, so it should be kept at somewhere between 3 and 6 months living expenses. It could be longer than that if if you are buying a house, if you are doing a house remodel, if there's some big event that's going on, then you should obviously have more money sitting in an emergency fund for that eventual event. But you don't want to take risk with that money. You want to have it someplace safe. So there are high yield savings accounts that outperform or out earn your bank accounts. High yield savings accounts, they're offered by lots and lots of banks all over the place. There is a website that you can go to, anybody can go to it, it's public. It's called bankrate.com. And on bankrate.com, they list the most competitive high yield savings accounts, mortgage rates, um, all different types of tools that are offered from banks. And you can earn 3.5% without any risk, without risk of loss of the funds going down. And that's generally where the emergency fund should reside. Again, it's not something that is used as a long-term growth tool. It's just used as I can get this money anytime that I want, and it's not exposed to volatility in the stock market. We also then want to build for long term. So these are all, and we're going to talk in more detail about how does a Roth IRA function? How does a employer retirement plan function? And there are different types. There's 401ks, 403bs, 457s. You're going to understand what all those codes mean. Again, they are specific to the US financial system, but you'll understand what all those mean, how to utilize them, make sure that you're making proper contributions to them, that you're not making ineligible contributions. Um, but ultimately, all of these things coalesce into a financial plan. A financial plan is not about numbers. A financial plan is about goals. A financial plan is about you as an individual. It is, when do you want to be financially independent? What do you want that to look like? Do you want to travel? Are you risk tolerant? Are you risk averse? Do you want to volunteer? Are there other family members that you want to try that you can try to take care of, try to help out? Um, do you want to have a horse? Do you want to have a boat? Like there's all these just recreational and aspirational aspects to it. So financial plan is not about numbers and tax and legal. It's about who are you as a human being and how do we take these tools and use them to be able to grow towards your financial plan. Um, this is an analogy that we created just to try to create an alignment between what you do and what we do. You from what Faith had mentioned with a lot of the specialties that are on here, it didn't sound like there's any ER doctors, anesthesiologists, diagnostic radiologists. So therefore, you would generally do a medical history or have continuity of care with people. For us, if you're engaged with someone in my career, in my discipline, there's an exploration. The exploration aspect is the numbers-based piece to this. What's your income? What are your expenses? What are your taxes? What do you get in employee benefits from your employer? All the different numbers-based pieces. You look at symptoms, we look at goals, values, aspirations. Again, what makes you unique? You run tests, we run financial calculations. A financial calculation basically says, here's where I am today. Here's where I want to be in the future. If I keep doing what I'm doing, where will I end up? And are there any excesses or inefficiencies, things that need to be shored up? I love this phrase, suggesting solutions. I believe that our role in as financial advisors is not to tell people what to do. It's to treat people like educated, intelligent human beings, that you're all critical thinkers. And so my role in this is to educate regarding the options that exist out there based on what you're trying to achieve. So if someone in my career, just like with you in medicine, if someone in my career, my discipline says, here's where you are, here's where you want to be, this is what you need to do. Just do this, trust me, it's going to work out. That doesn't create peace of mind. But if someone instead says, here's where you are, here's where you want to be, and here's the breadth of your options, everything has downsides. There's no panacea, there's nothing perfect that exists out there. There's no perfect solution. No matter what aspect you're looking at, if you're looking at saving for retirement, saving for college education for children, saving or buying a home, um, insurance, all these things have options. And understanding what your options are and what the downsides are is where a lot of the peace of mind comes in. And then obviously, again, if you've got continuity of care with your patients, you continue to do follow-up over time. Same thing for us. We do reviews. There's a lot of foreseen changes you have in your lives. There's a lot of unforeseen changes that you're going to have in your lives. And so every financial tool that you use has the ability to adapt. You should never feel stuck in the decisions that you make today. We obviously want to make it as optimal as we possibly can, but if things change in the future, don't feel like you're stuck in something. You can always modify as circumstances evolve. One thing, as a little disclaimer, I should mention, I'm here as a guest, obviously, at Faith's gracious invitation. Um, none of you are obligated to work with any particular financial advisor. I'm here just to provide an education, a third party education as an external expert in this area, but you can pick any financial advisor, any relationship you want to establish, whether it is through a family member, through one of your colleagues at work, that you should feel the latitude to not be pushed in a specific direction. Um, that you should feel like you're being armed to make choices. This is a little surreal. So the phrase that Faith has heard multiple times, that I love to repeat over and over and over again, is that none of you said, "I want to get rich, so I'm going into medicine." you didn't choose to go into medicine to make money. You went into medicine because all of you like science in some way or another. You're probably all type A. It's kind of hard to not be type A in medicine. Um, you all want to help people with their quality of life, and again, whatever discipline it happens to be. So it wasn't about the money. However, you'd also probably know that you're going to have security, that physicians will have a place in society one way or the other, regardless of robotics and AI. You will all have the ability to continue to use your education either clinically or in some other way. But this is kind of weird because, and again, I'm using US numbers, but if someone completes their training by age 30 and they make $200,000 a year from ages 30 until 65, until basically normal retirement ages, cumulatively, the $200,000 per year with inflation over time will amount to $23,824,000. Again, none of you said I'm going into medicine because I want to make $24 million. This is just a natural byproduct of what you do. And so the purpose to this talk is not so much about what do I do on a day-to-day basis, that we think about our finances as what shows up in our bank account after taxes on a month-to-month basis. But it's more so about how do I prepare? How do I plan for this number? Now, a few things. One, this number is just you on a sheet of paper. If you have a spouse or partner, their income is additive on top of this. Two, this is not your compensation package. Your compensation package includes your gross income, but it also includes benefits from your employer, matching on retirement plans, medical liability protection, continuing medical education, subsidies for health insurance, subsidy for disability insurance, and so on and so forth. And so this is just your gross earned income. However, my condolences, it's also gross, which means that you're going to pay tax on this number and you'll pay a lot in taxes long term. You may already, depending upon where you're working, if you're attending, you may already be a little tax sensitive with how much money goes to the respective entities, federally, state entities from a tax perspective, or if you're a medical student or in residency or fellowship, it's going to happen at some point where your income will go up significantly. And it is a little jarring, both you're doing all the same things on a day-to-day basis you were doing during training, but now your income, you're getting paid three, four, or five times more than what you were um, during training, but also how much the government takes from our income. And so tax management is one thing that we'll all want to try to mitigate over time. But ultimately, this number is how do I use this relative to, again, my long-term goals. Estate planning, also not fun. With patients, you probably come across patients and their families, you probably come across powers of attorney for healthcare and property or for healthcare. Um, Having a will, having a trust, powers of attorney, guardianship for children. These are things that again provide peace of mind. God forbid something happens to you, but not necessarily fun to talk about. This we're going to come back to a little bit as well, the tax reduction strategies. This one, this tendency by the entirety, one of the things that we get into is liability protection. That if I get sued for either medical or personal liability, I don't want somebody to attach themselves to my assets. I'm in Illinois. Faith was in Illinois. Faith, I believe that you're in Wisconsin right now. So different states have different rules. Um, Tenants by the entirety is an Illinois-based law. There's about 9 other states that allow tenancy by the entirety. And what it says is if you live in a state that offers this, when you close on your home, when you buy your home, it's a way to be able to title your deed if you're married. So tenants by the entirety says if any of you bought a home, you know there's this giant stack of documents that's incredibly intimidating to sign. One of those documents is your deed. Your deed simply stipulates homeownership. If you're single, your house is in your name, and that's kind of the extent of it. But if you're married, you have choices. One of the choices in these 10 states, Illinois being one of them, is tenancy by the entirety. What that says is, in order for someone to sue you and force you to sell your home in order to pay off a lawsuit settlement, the entirety has to be at fault. So both you and your spouse need to be named in that lawsuit. You both need to settle against that plaintiff. And the combination of your liability protection needs to be less than what your lawsuit settlement is for. So the only scenario where that would apply in a medical setting is if your spouse is another physician, nurse, PA, you both work in a similar discipline, you both work on that same patient, and you both get sued. Hopefully unbelievably slim. The most common personal liability is car accidents, which is also obviously an individual liability scenario. So tenancy by the entirety is a way of kind of naturally liability protecting homes. Um, in Wisconsin, where Faith is, they have something called a homestead exemption. There's a couple different states around the country that have homestead exemptions. What this says is everyone gets it in the state. You don't have to choose it. And it's an amount of equity in your home that's liability protected. In Wisconsin, it's $75,000 per person. So if you're a married couple in the state of Wisconsin, you have $150,000 of equity in your home that's protected. Florida is unlimited. Florida has an unlimited homestead exemption, no matter how much our house is worth, whether we have a mortgage or not. House is 100% liability protected. Arizona, California, they are very liability friendly. It's not easy to protect homes in those states. So if you are in the states, you want to understand the laws, the state tenancy clauses is what it's called, and being able to understand how to liability protect your home. This part down here, the protection planning side. So my philosophy on protection is that everyone wants security, just human nature. We all want security, but the weird disconnect in the financial world is that security is synonymous with insurance. Nobody wants to pay for insurance. Nobody likes being paid by insurance. I mean, something catastrophic or traumatic has happened, but yet we all want security. So no matter what type of protection it is, the thought behind it is I want to make sure that I am comprehensively protected. If something, God forbid, unforeseen happens, I want to make sure that my financial plan isn't going to fall flat on its face. That I have something in place that's going to protect me to the extent that I need to. Um, but I want to pay as little as I have to for it. So I want to be protected, but I want to suppress the costs. I want as much money as possible going towards building wealth, not necessarily protecting wealth, but I still want to be protected. So that's the equation with the insurance world. Um, One of the things that bothers me specifically about disability insurance is if you're in the States, once you finish medical school and you become a resident, your name ends up on lists that financial advisors pay for and then start dripping you on a day-to-day basis with marketing about disability insurance. And it's frustrating. Literally, people in the States get 8 to 10 emails a day about disability insurance. So in my industry, we're kind of commoditizing ourselves with this topic, and you feel like you're being pushed by all these people in my industry, which will generally make you push back and just kind of have inertia with it. But ultimately, again, it's the income protection piece to a financial plan. Okay, this slide is like Sesame Street investments. It is meant to be very macro. There's a lot of nuance to it that we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk about how these can be used, but um, but they're all unique. Um, where you practice and what type of employer you have, that will determine in a lot of circumstances how you utilize these. So this middle section, tax deferred, a 401k, it's an IRS code that denotes that someone is working for either a for-profit entity or a nonprofit entity. That's what the 401k means. A 401k is a retirement plan that's offered by either a for-profit employer or a nonprofit employer. A 403b is all nonprofit. 457, there's two types of 457s. There are governmental 457s and there are tax exempt 457s. If you work for like a Cook County hospital in Chicago, or if you work for an LA county, or if you work for a state entity, a state-based employer, then you may have a 457. That's a governmental 457. Governmental 457s work the exact same way as 403bs, and 403bs work the exact same way as 401ks. When you see these codes, do not let it cause any kind of confusion because all they mean is you can save $24,500 in that plan.
Can I pause
Now,
you there?
I'm sorry,
Can I pause you there?
please.
Um, so let's say someone is working for the VA, which happens here. What kind of plan would it be?
It'd be a 457.
Okay, 457.
Yep.
And I think it's a question I've received from the group before as to does it really matter what your organization is offering, 401k versus 403b versus 457? Are there any advantages or pros and cons of any?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. None. Typically, it's a great question. Typically, the one thing, 403bs and 401ks will have matching contributions, and 457s generally don't. 457s, you work for a governmental entity, and typically the employer contribution is in the form of a pension, not in the form of a matching contribution. So, um, so this week, one of the cardiologists that I help, he he has been at Cook County Hospital. He did his residency, he did his fellowship, and then he spent over 20 years in the Cook County system. And he's 55 years old. And he just retired from Cook County. And he's actually taking a month off and then going to work for Northwestern.
Hmm.
He starts getting paid his pension income in the fall. And because he's been at Cook County for such a long period of time, his pension is huge. His pension is $420,000 a year. And then he's going to go work for Northwestern as a cardiologist and earn a cardiologist income at Northwestern on top of what he gets in his pension. On top of that, he has a 457. He's been saving $24,500 or what the annual maximum has been for years and years and years in the Cook County 457 on top of that. So we're taking his 457 and we're rolling it over into an IRA. We're getting it out of that system. So he can have his Cook County pension, get paid the Cook County pension. He can also then earn an income in another occupation or in another employer with another employer, and he can continue to save in the 401k that's offered through Northwestern. But the no matter what the code is, so at the VA, the VA is called TSP, tax sheltered plan. So that also is the same $24,500. But the VA doesn't match. The VA, the employer contributions come in the form of a pension instead. So when it comes to planning, when it comes to saying, well, I want to try to incorporate this into a retirement plan, what you would say is, am I going to stay at this employer for long term? And all you can do is plan based on the information that you have today and make adjustments as circumstances change. But the pension systems are very good at providing an idea of what the income is going to be at varying ages or at your normal retirement age. And so what you would generally say, or incorporating this into a retirement plan is you want to say, what's my lifestyle? How much per month do I want to try to live on a day-to-day basis? Assign an inflationary rate to that. So if you want to retire and live on $10,000 a month in today's dollars, and you're going to be retired in the year 2050, then what do I need to get? What what would be the equivalent value in 2050 to get the same buying power as $10,000 today? How much of that is going to be um, accounted for by my pension?
Got it. And Clay, can I ask you, is there a tool available for someone to calculate this number
Oh,
you're aware of?
yeah, there's lots of them.
Okay.
One of them, so this is a system that I use that's called eMoney.
Okay.
Um, eMoney, I use Fidelity. My company uses Fidelity to do investment management, and so Fidelity, they bought this system called eMoney about 12 years ago, and I have unlimited access to it. So, as an example, so this is a kind of a template that I created. So, if I can move this. Oh, come on. No, come on. I can't get it to go sideways. Help. All right, I'll move you over here. So, um, so this is just a hypothetical 36-year-old couple. Um, and this system does really three things. Thing one is it's an aggregator. And what that means is that we can link any asset or liability into the system. So what becomes really difficult about planning is really inventory or organization. What do I have? You do residency in one place and you've got a retirement plan there, you fellowship in another place and you have a retirement plan there, and then you move and you go into an attending role, maybe you change jobs again. And some people have retirement plans all over the place. And that's just you as an individual. If your spouse or partner has also got multiple plans out there, how do you track it all? And so eMoney, there's also one called Personal Capital. Personal Capital was bought by Empower a few years ago. Quicken can do some aggregation. And so what these systems do is they allow you to link your assets and liabilities into the system, and it pulls the data in on a day-to-day basis. Every day, as the stock market goes up and down, as you spend money, as you save money, you can see how much you have from a snapshot perspective. There's also, in eMoney's case, not all of these have them, but there's this thing in here called a vault. And the vault is any sacred, essential legal document that you want to store. It can be in here so that if someone needs to be able to access one of these things, or if you need to access, if you're traveling, and you need to know what your health insurance is or what your power of attorney is, it's all stored in here. My favorite part, though, is oops, click too fast. Is these reports. So these reports, um, once you put your income into the system, your expenses, you link all your assets and liabilities, you can then run projections on all of this stuff. So it gives you a feel for where you're going to be long term. So like my favorite one in here is this 5-year cash flow analysis that that if this couple has $100,000 in a taxable investment account, and if the aggregate of their Roth IRAs and employer provided retirement plans is $570,000, if they have an emergency fund of $60,000, and that equals 730,000, and if the physician makes 300 and her husband makes 200 or her partner makes 200, and that's $500,000 gross income. That's their gross income. Well, if they spend $10,000 a month in base expenses, and if this is what their mortgage payment is, and if this is what real estate taxes and homeowners associations and homeowners insurance is, and then this is income taxes. Okay, I'm gonna skip ahead for a minute. This $64,000, where this number comes from, is this couple, they both work, they're both maxing out their respective 401k, 403b, 457. So that's $24,500 each, which is therefore $49,000 combined. Then they're also doing the backdoor Roth IRA. And we're going to talk about Roth IRA, backdoor Roth IRA. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But they're both doing this as well. That's $7,500 each or $15,000 combined. So it's $49,000 going here between both spouses and another $15,000 going here between both spouses, which therefore combined is $64,000. So their planned savings is just how much they're putting in total in their 401ks, 403bs, 457s, and their Roth IRAs is this number. So we say, here's what comes in, here's what goes out, here's what's left over. What do we do with it? Well, generally, we'll take it and add it to a taxable investment account. We'll want to grow it long term. We don't want to sit just in the bank and earn not much interest. We want to try to build it for long term. And so this is kind of a flow of gross income, income taxes, planned savings. That's what goes out the door. That's what's left over. And then add that to the taxable investment account and then run the flow again and just do it on a year by year basis. This something like this gives you an idea of how to take your your assets, your resources, and plan all this stuff to get a feel for what is my net worth going to look like. So if it's as of today, if this couple has all these assets and they've got a mortgage of $800,000, their net worth is 930,000. Well, if we keep doing all that on a year by year basis, 5 years from now, what's that going to look like? If we just keep doing what we're doing, then that's what their net worth would be. So this is a little bit about the time value of money and about compound interest also, that having interest compound on your behalf is enormous. The amount that these accounts can grow over time is huge. So everything that's on here is basically what's on this chart. And it's just in this example, how are we using them? Um, so this number is what the IRS it's the IRS limit and how much someone under age 50 can save in a 401k, 403b, or 457. Okay, two things about this. One, it needs to be completed by the end of the calendar year. So we have until December 31st to maximize that number. Two, the academic year kind of screws us up because if you finish your training June 30th or end of July and you start your attending role in September, well, now you've got 4 months to cram that money in. It's a huge impact to your cash flow. Most physicians generally feel a little bit behind when it comes to saving for retirement. They haven't been able to save for retirement as aggressively as they would have wanted to if they were in a different discipline. But now I'm 30, 32, 34 years old. I haven't been saving much for my retirement. I want to start optimizing this or maximizing it. And the $24,500 needs to be allocated. It needs to be deposited into these accounts within a 4 month time frame. It's deducted from your salary. It's called a salary deferral. You don't push the money in. You elect how much your employer will take from your paycheck to then deposit into these in every one of these scenarios. So one thing to think about if you're in training is making sure that you can budget for how much to be able to put in during that second half of that academic year that you graduate. And then in January of the following year, that's when you would reduce on a monthly basis, which you put in to spread it out over the course of the year. That's the first thing about this. The second thing about this is that the 24,500 is what you can save no matter how many employers you have. Meaning, if you are a resident or fellow the first half of the year, and you're saving in your residency or fellowship 401k or 403b, and you put a little bit of money into that the first half of the year, when you start your attending role, it's not a new $24,500. You have to subtract what you contributed during residency or fellowship from that 24,500 to make sure that you don't over contribute for that year. So if you put a new $24,500 in, your new employer, your attending role, they will take that $24,500. But then what will happen is both your residency, your fellowship 401k, 403b, and your attending 401k, 403b report to the IRS what you saved. And in April, when you file taxes, they'll say you overcontributed. You have to remove money from those plans, which is an administrative hassle beyond belief. And it also costs you money in taxes. So you do not want to over contribute. There's also matching contributions that are additive on top of this. So matching contributions are usually 3% of your income or 6% of your income. 6% is a pretty common number. Endeavor in Chicago is 6%. University of Chicago is huge. University of Chicago is 13%. But every employer that offers a 401k or 403b, they have a match. And again, it's usually either 3% of your income or 6% of your income. It's additive on top of your 24,500. You do not subtract what the matching contribution is from your $24,500 contribution. So if you are an attending making $200,000 a year and it's a 6% match, that's $12,000 in contributions on top of your 24,500. Therefore, 36,500 is what's going in to this retirement plan for you. Now, this over here, if a 30-year-old practicing physician starts saving $24,500 in their 401k, 403b, 457, once the money goes in, they then invest it. There's a whole menu of investment options that you can choose from inside of that retirement plan. And if you are someone who wants to learn about this and wants to design your own portfolio inside the 401k, 403b, 457, there's a menu of 20, 25 different options you can pick from and to build a diversified portfolio. If all that sounds completely intimidating, there are some turnkey ways that they will allow you to be able to invest it. One way is they'll have a representative like me that can help you figure out how to invest it. They can basically understand what your financial acumen level is, what your risk temperament is, what your proximity is to using it, meaning when you would approximately retire, and help you create a diversified portfolio collaboratively with a professional. Or there's also things called target age funds, or target date funds. And what that does is it says the money is going to be broken up in a default way based on when approximately you are going to retire. So if you're going to retire in 2055, they'll have a relatively aggressive target age or target date where it'll have a lot more money in stocks than in bonds. And over time, the risk tapers. It's kind of a set it and forget it type thing. It's being rebalanced for you. It's diversified. So it has all the different components, all the different types of investments you would need to have the yins and yangs in a portfolio so that you are mitigating risk, but it's only relative to your age and your proximity to retirement. It's not based on your risk temperament. Risk temperament can be very different. So in other words, if you're going to retire in 2055 and you feel conservative, you feel kind of risk averse about investments, you're going to have the same component, the same mixture of stocks and bonds as somebody who is going to retire in 2055, but maybe feels more risk tolerant. You will all have the same mixture. So while it's diversified, it's not necessarily strategic. And one thing to just keep in mind when it comes to those, but again, if you feel a little trepidatious about investing, this is a turnkey way of doing it. This 8% annual rate of return, the US stock market over the last 46 years has made 12.4%. 8% is supposed to be a more conservative, what if history doesn't repeat itself type number. So if someone puts $24,500 in a 401k or 403b, and that grows by 8%, it'd be worth $4,683,000 by the time that this person is 65 years old. That doesn't include the matching contribution. If a matching contribution again is 6% on $200,000 of income or $12,000, this number basically goes up by about 1.5, and it'd be closer to 6.9 million instead
Can I
of 4.7
pause you
million.
there?
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you so much. We with finances, just so many, new terms, even for me, like I feel like it gets better the more you hear it. First of all, if you have any question, I mean to the group, please feel free to ask, put in the comment section, or just ask it right now. You can raise your hand up and ask. But Clay, I have a question since you're just on this slide right now.
yeah,
So we see this 8% annual return rate of return and whatnot. What happens when you put money in one of this in retirement accounts? Does it is it is not it's not a savings account, right? So what is happening to the money there? How is it being invested? Can you say a little about that?
yeah. So this slide, importance of asset allocation.
Okay.
So asset allocation is synonymous with diversification. And it is how much you have in stocks, how much you have in bonds, how much you have in other types of investments. A stock, you own a piece of a company. It's a very fractional share, but you own a piece of that company and you own both the income or the revenue and the assets of that company, again, on a super fractional basis. A bond, you are loaning money to a corporation or a government. So through a bond, if you invest in a bond, if you put $100 into a bond, there'll be a coupon rate. The coupon rate will be 4% or 5%, something along those lines. And that's what the interest is on that $100. So if you put $100 into a bond and it's a 4% coupon rate, then it'll pay you $4 per year of interest. It'll be reinvested in that investment. But bonds are safe. Bonds are supposed to be in place to reduce risk with regards to an overall portfolio. Um, so so this hopefully is going to be not overwhelming.
Got it.
Um,
So,
but wait, hang on,
oh,
Faith.
go on.
Okay, so this when it says on this line
Mm,
where it says stocks, bonds, other asset classes, there's a lot of different types, the broad choice between these, but there's also different types of stocks, different types of bonds, different types of asset classes, or other asset classes. So in the States, most of us, when we talk about the stock market, we're talking about the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is the 500 largest US stocks. So it's Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, all the things that we see and use on a day-to-day basis. Mid-sized company stocks, these are companies that maybe you might have heard of here and there, but a lot of them that we're not familiar with. There are literally thousands of publicly traded stocks. So these are large company stocks. Then you have mid-sized stocks. Then you have small company stocks. So we want to have a little bit of each one of these. We also want to have international stocks. So this one is all the stocks that exist in the world outside of the US. This is emerging markets, which is basically small international companies like non-US companies. Um, and each of these behave differently. If you just look across this grid, you can see the numbers are different. They're not positively correlated. They don't all behave the same way at the same time. Over the last month, large company stocks are down 1.55. Small company stocks are up 5.22. So nobody knew that was what was going to happen. Nobody knew that over the last month that was what was going to happen. You just needed to have small company stocks in your portfolio to be able to make sure that you're diversified, you're mitigating risk, but you're also optimizing reward. So we want to have a little bit of all these different types of stocks as well as all these different types of bonds. So you can see on here, the bond rates are all really, really boring. The interest rates up here, they're in the 10, 15, 20%. That's obviously what we want, but there's this this diversification. So this power of diversification, there's two sides to the investing equation. Side one is I don't know when the market's going to go down, when the stock market's going to go down. And this will hopefully give everyone some peace of mind too. Um, this thing is frozen. Why are you frozen? So diversification is again designed to mitigate risk. Go do it this way. So there's a behavioral finance side to what I do that I absolutely love. So the way that our brains work, our brains are the same. They've been the same for the last 50,000, sorry, 50,000. Yeah, 50,000 years. Our brains haven't evolved in 50,000 years. We have the same wiring, the same fight or flight reactions to things. So major stock market cycles, this is the average downturn. The average length of a downturn is 20 months. So the downturns are unbelievably painful. The average downturn in the US is 20 months and negative 41%. That hurts a lot. If you've got $100,000 in a 401k, 403b, or 457, and we go through a 41% drop, now you have $59,000, it hurts. You worked hard to earn that money to put it into that system. And so to have that kind of loss is extremely painful. But the average upturn is 2.5 times longer than the downturn, and it's 4 times larger. So we want to try to avoid this as much as we can and participate in this as much as we can. But in the mind of the investor, the way that this is actually measured, this is a behavioral finance study that goes back decades. Losses feel 2.5 times worse than gains feel good. So even though the gains are 4 times larger on average, the losses feel 2.5 times bigger than the gains feel positive. But we don't know when these negatives are going to happen or how bad they're going to be. So the S&P 500, again, 500 largest US stocks, during the technology bubble, it lost 47%. The two sides to the investing equation, market goes down, I want to have a soft landing. I don't want to be exposed to it all that much. The market goes up, I want to reap the rewards. I want to make money. So this diversified portfolio was able to do both those things. It preserved loss on the front end. So here's the 30% preservation of loss during this technology bubble that lasted 30 months. So the diversified portfolio lost 17.7, the S&P 500 lost 47. So that's 30% preservation. But on the back end, the diversified portfolio, this black line went up faster than this green line did. So not only did this preserve loss on the front end, but it also grew more on the back end. So this is the reason why we want to have all the stuff that's on here in a portfolio so that once we put this money in to our portfolios, into our investments, and we have this choice of stocks, bonds, other asset classes, that we can mitigate that risk, the downside. And that exists like this 4.683 million um, or whatever number it is, again, with matching contributions and so on, we do not want to be overexposed when we are approaching retirement. So the more time we have, this is again kind of a little time value of money thing. So investing in the game of probabilities, not possibilities. We all hear the stories of people investing in Nvidia or people buying Bitcoin and all the ways that people make huge amounts of money in a short period of time. That's not common. That is unbelievably lucky. So um, the stock market historically, we've never had a 15-year negative in stock market history. So as much as there's a lot of volatility, uncertainty that's going on right now because of the way that the US government is being run, I'll just throw that out there. Um, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear at this point, and a lot of people that are feeling uncomfortable with the stock market. But that said, if you're not going to use this money for 15 years or longer, if this is retirement money that's going to a 401k, 403b, 457, you should feel comfortable taking as much risk as you possibly can because we've never had a 15-year negative in stock market history. It's not a guarantee, but the probability is that if you put money into these things, it's going to be worth more later than it is today, regardless of how much volatility or discomfort there happens to be. So when the money goes into these things, you absolutely want to make sure that it's diversified, make sure that it is continuing to be rebalanced over time because not everything grows at the same pace at the same time. And you can do it either trying to work collaboratively with someone like me, or do it on your own, or do it on a turnkey basis with one of these target date or target age funds. This is all, it's a lot of information. It's like drinking from a fire hose. But 5 years from now, 10 years from now, as you continue to use these structures, you'll start to feel more and more comfortable with them. And maybe if you start out in one of these target age or target date funds, if you say, I just want to have a turnkey thing that is a set it and forget it, and I don't have to worry about it, and that's the way that you start. But then 5, 6, 7 years from now, you start to see your statements and you start to understand if something happens with war or with oil prices or with interest rates, how that impacts your portfolio. Maybe you start to feel more comfortable with it, and then you can rebalance it, do something a little more strategic on your own. Um, the money that goes into these can all be pre-tax. So what that means is if we use that $100,000 income, or sorry, $200,000 income number, if your income is $200,000 and you put $24,500 into a 401k, 403b, 457 on a pre-tax basis, you do not pay tax on $200,000 this year. You pay tax on $176, sorry, $175,500. It is a tax deduction. You're deferring your current income to your future retired self. So you avoid tax on the way in. If you think that you are going to be in a lower tax bracket when you're retired than you are now, you generally want to put the money in on a pre-tax basis. So another way of thinking of it is if you live beneath your means, if your standard of living, if your cost of living is less than what your income is, you'll probably go down in tax bracket when you retire. And therefore, the money going in pre-tax, you'll avoid taxes at a higher rate today. And you'll have to pull money out later on and pay tax on it, but that tax rate will hopefully be lower at that point than it is now. So you could put it in pre-tax. You could also do Roth. What Roth means is the money goes in on a post-tax basis. So if your income is $200,000 and you put the $24,500 in on a Roth basis, you do not get a tax break today. You still pay tax on $200,000. Money is going in after taxes, but you never have to pay any tax on it ever again. The money comes out completely tax-free to you. And each one of these can be done either pre-tax or Roth or both. If you say, I don't know what my tax rate is going to be when I'm 68 years old. So you don't have to do it all or nothing. You could do half of it pre-tax, half of it Roth if you want to. If you put the money in on a post-tax basis, if you choose to do the $24,500 on an after-tax basis, the matching contribution from your employer is still pre-tax. If your employer wants a tax deduction, so your employer will put the money in on a post-tax basis. I'm sorry, on a pre-tax basis, even if you put it in post-tax. Now this again is just a big impressive bucket of money that's sitting there when you're 65 years old or 62, whatever age that you want to retire. It's just a number on a sheet of paper. It's not a financial plan. So you kind of want to understand how this applies to your planning. Um, on top of that is the Roth IRA. The Roth IRA is mutually exclusive from the 401k. The 401k, that's offered through an employer. This IRA sends to an individual retirement account or individual retirement arrangement. Not done through an employer, it's done individually. And you can do it on your own. You can do it through a financial advisor. You can do it through your bank. There's a lot of different avenues you can establish a Roth IRA. The issue with the Roth IRA is that there are these income phase outs. And what that means is once your income exceeds these numbers, these levels, you can no longer put money directly into a Roth IRA. So if you're single and your adjusted gross income, your taxable income is over 168, you can't put $7,500 directly into a Roth IRA. If you're married, filing your taxes jointly, your income exceeds $246,000 combined, you can't put the $7,500 directly into the Roth IRA. The word directly is the operative. So if your income is below these numbers, you can put the $7,500 directly in. And that is on top of this 24,500 as well. So again, that's that $64,000 number that I put into this e-money system, that if someone is, or a couple is both, if they are both maxing out their 401ks and 403bs, and they're both maxing out their Roth IRAs, that's $64,000 combined. So this Roth IRA, if your income exceeds these numbers, you can't put money directly into the Roth IRA. However, there's this backdoor Roth IRA. By IRS parlance, there's no such thing as a backdoor Roth IRA. It's called a Roth IRA conversion. And what it says is your incomes are over these levels, you can't put money directly in the Roth IRA. However, anyone can put $7,500 into a traditional IRA on an after-tax basis. So your income is over these levels, instead of putting the money into the Roth IRA, you can put money into the traditional IRA, but you're not going to deduct it from your income taxes. It's $7,500 that goes into the traditional IRA. The money sits there for a day or two, and then you convert, which just means transfer from traditional IRA to Roth IRA. Again, I use Fidelity as the institution that I do my investing through. So I have two IRAs with Fidelity, one traditional IRA, one Roth IRA. I put the $7,500 into the traditional IRA. I wait a couple of days, then I go back into the Fidelity system. I go to the traditional IRA and I say I want to transfer it. And then Fidelity says, where do you want to transfer it to? And I say to my Fidelity Roth IRA, they move it over for me. And then I invest the money afterwards. I invest it in my stock bond composition strategy. It's just a two-step process. If you are married and your spouse doesn't work, doesn't earn an income, you can also do something called a spousal Roth IRA, where you can put the $7,500 in for your spouse, even if they don't have an earned income. So, so this again is on top of this number. The one thing about the Roth IRA is the contributions do not need to be done, don't need to be completed until filing taxes. So April 15th of every year, when we go through that wonderful tax filing day, that's when we have to make our contributions, but they can be dedicated to the prior year. So you have until April of 2027 to make a Roth contribution for 2026. Therefore, from a use and order of magnitude perspective, you want to make sure this gets in before the end of 2026 because you'll have another 4 months to be able to get this in for 2026. You just have to make sure that you dedicate it to this year, even though you're making it in the first quarter of 2027. Um, Again, this is just simply what exists out there, what you can save in. A 529 plan works very similarly to a Roth IRA as the same tax composition. Once the money goes in, it's a post-tax contribution, but the money grows tax-free. And the 529 is the IRS code that is dedicated to college education accounts for children. That that these codes are for retirement plans through employers. This Roth IRA is something you do on your own. The 529 plan is the IRS code that's dedicated to tax advantage savings for kids' college education. Um, it's the same thing where it goes in on an after-tax basis, but everything grows tax-free on the inside. So in this scenario where we have this income and all these outflows, and then this money that's left over, and then I have that money theoretically going into this taxable investment account where they're continuing to build here. The that's this column, this bucket on this side that I've already maxed these things out. I've maxed this out. I have extra money left over. Generally, it's going to go into something like this. It's the NQ stands for non-qualified, which just means that it doesn't have special tax status like these do. It is a post-tax contribution that goes into it, but everything is taxable on the way out. Tax deferred, you save money on the way in on taxes, but you pay tax on the way out. Roth, you pay tax on the way in, you pay nothing on the way out. With this over here, you're paying tax on the way in and you're paying tax on the way out. So, what a lot of people will do with taxable accounts is they'll use something called index funds. Index funds are low fee and they're what's called passively managed. And what that means is the the fund that you're investing in, the index fund that you're investing in, there's not a lot of buying and selling and trading of stocks on the inside. Your composition kind of sits and grows on a passive basis over time. So you don't pay a lot of taxes while it grows. But when you use that money, you have to pay tax on all the gains. So in other words, if you put $100,000 into an index fund and it grows to $1 million by the time you're 65 years old, you have $900,000 in gains. You're going to pay tax on that $900,000. And it's usually 20 to 25% in taxes. So it could cost you $180,000 to $225,000 of taxes to use that 900,000 that you paid income taxes on the contributions before you put it in there. You're getting taxed on the way in and taxed on the way out. There's a strategy that exists out there that has been around for about 10, 12 years that's called direct indexing or custom indexing. And it's a way of being able to avoid tax on the way out. It's a way of being able to put money into one of these taxable investment accounts, but not be hit with taxes on the way out. So if you are in a scenario where you are maxing all these things out and you're saving for your kids' college education, and you're taking advantage of these tax mitigated strategies that the governments give us, and then you're putting money into this, you want to look into direct indexing because it's going to help you a lot when you want to use this money to not get crushed with taxes on the back end. Um, I can get into a description of that if you want to, but I also don't want to overwhelm either. I know that Faith had said that we want to keep this to somewhere around a half hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been very helpful. I love hearing the stocks over and over. And I think, it adds up over time. Like the first time I heard this stock, everything kind of flew over my head. And as you described, it's like drinking out of a fire hose, but a water hose. But but I think it gets better with time. So just my encouragement to people, if you're like, oh my God, this is a lot. At least today you now know what a 401k is or what a 403b is versus what a Roth IRA is. I think to the people who are left, 10 of you who are left on the call now, do you have any questions for Clay before we kind of close out? Any question, any burning question. And Clay, if you don't mind also kind of put in your how is the best way to contact you in the chat or anybody in your company or something so we
Sure.
can also reach out to you as well and the whole group can know.
Yep. So
But this was good. Thank you so, so much. Let's tell Clay thank you in the comments. He took out his time this weekend. He's not in the sun, even though I know the smoke is bad, isn't it? It's isn't it bad out there? How's the air quality in Chicago and Illinois?
uh, yeah. I I was invited to play golf yesterday afternoon,
Yeah.
and a couple of my friends went out there, and I chose not to. One of the radiologists that I met with yesterday morning said that being outside in Chicago with the air quality that it was, if you're outside for an hour, was the equivalent of smoking 3 cigarettes.
Wow. Oh wow.
Yeah, so I am very white and pasty right
Oh wow.
now because I not I put on SPF 70 when I go outside, but I did not get outside yesterday. Hopefully today, tomorrow. But yeah, the air quality has been awful, and I feel so bad for people in Canada having to
I mean,
go
it's
through
bad
it.
here too, so it's not as if I'm,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay, awesome. Thank you so, so much. And I'll give you the rest of your Saturday. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Our next meeting, program director, I don't know if you want to put it in the chart. It's going to be our regular prayer meeting that we'll have, I want to say on the 1st. Is it August 1st? August 1st, and we'll just meet again. But Clay has put his details in the comment section. Please reach out to him if you want to learn more about this and how you can invest. We have people here who are residents, fellows in the US, and those who are also working their way in. So you might be like, I don't know how what to talk to him about, but who knows in the next couple of years you would need him as kind of a financial advisor. And so very, very recommended for sure.
thank you, Faith, and thank you again for your infectious enthusiasm.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Have a
Bye-bye.
wonderful weekend. Thanks, everyone.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.